Okay, I think we're live now. So welcome everyone. In this session, we have Julie Albers, Senior Director, Data Science Analytics at Nordstrom, and she's presenting Building a Data Product that Actually Gets Used. Just a quick note to post your questions in the Q&A box instead of the chat. And Julie, a reminder to set your timer, and off to you.
Thank you so much for the reminder. Okay, hey everybody. So we're excited to be here. So thanks so much for having me. Okay, so people come to work desperately wanting to contribute. They want to be relevant. They want to do meaningful and challenging work, shine, and make an impact. I think anybody that knows me long enough knows at this point that I love Brené Brown, and I listen to her podcast, Dare to Lead, pretty religiously. And this one with Liz Weissman on impact players is one of the most meaningful, it has been to me. And there's so much good info, but I think this line that people coming to work wanting to contribute has really resonated with me and helps me really think about what makes people feel like they're contributing. So hopefully you can help with that today. Okay, I'm going to tell two stories about projects that I've worked on in my past. These aren't Nordstrom stories, they're just Julie stories. And then I'll go through the steps to getting product adoption and whether or not each of these efforts was successful. And then at the end, we can guess which one actually got implemented. So the first project I worked on with an engineer that was on my team, and we built a model that predicted for many of each item at each store we expected to sell. And we used things like how much inventory was available and how that item sold at stores around that store. And then once we had our forecast, we compared it to what the sales actually were and used the difference to highlight the top 10 opportunity items where we felt that they had enough inventory, but not enough sales. And the idea being that if we could get this info into the hands of the people at the stores, they could rethink about their merchandising and highlight products that should have been doing better. It's funny is that when we built the model and then we tested it, and I tested it by having a piece of paper, the report, and going into a couple of stores and actually looking for the items myself. And this picture is of one of the items was on a rack in the back of the store. It wasn't even on the floor at all. Other items were in boxes in the back, or they were like hidden on a super low shelf that you couldn't even see. And just seeing that it called out these products that had opportunities to be put in a more visible area, and they actually were hidden, I was like super excited. Okay, so that's story one. Okay, the second one is same engineer and I got together and we built a bespoke marketing advertising measurement system, so a multi-touch attribution model. And what this model did over the prior model was it allowed us to see every marketing channel and the influence that had on the customer's ultimate purchase. So instead of just giving credit to the last thing somebody used, it gave credit to all of the channels that had an influence on the purchase that we could track. And at this time, well, it looks like we communicated our tickets via memes. We actually did use Jira. Okay. So go through how to build a data product that actually gets used. Oh, but first, I want to give you a disclaimer. So I do not believe that the ultimate purpose of absolutely everything that we work on is to get it into production, to get it be adopted. we need to allow ourselves and encourage our teams to fail. That's how we learn, and that's how we grow, and honestly, it's how we have fun. So give yourself permission to try and do the steps that we have to do, and we absolutely want to get something into production, and we need to, but also encourage failure and embrace it as a learning opportunity. Okay, disclaimer over, on to fun. Okay, so step one is you need to have an idea. And a great idea can come from anywhere. It can come from your stakeholders, it can come from executive leadership, it can come from your team, it can come from you, it can come from somebody on the street that you just run into and meet, from your customers, anywhere. So in the two examples that I gave in the store merchandising project and the marketing project, both of those ideas came from internal. So what I mean by that is they were either my ideas or my engineer's ideas, or it was our idea together. So check mark, both of those, we both had ideas for both projects. Easy. Okay, then the next step is to gather the real requirements. So we need to use our detective skills to get the full scope on requirements, and we need to think like a UX designer or a customer experience researcher. Most important thing is, how is this going to be used? We need to understand what purpose that we're building something for before we can get started and figure how to answer the problem. We want to understand who is going to use it, how are they going to use it, how often, and what is the ultimate goal or problem that this is trying to solve. This is super important, and it's key to any question in analytics. We would be drowning if we answered every question without asking any questions in return, and especially if those questions that we get from our stakeholders start with, well, it would be interesting if, and without any sort of thought about how they're going to actually use the data once they get it. By asking all these questions and considering the answers as we scope and build our product, it's going to help us consider the true needs for our stakeholders. So in the example of the merch project, we did talk to our stakeholders a little bit, but mostly in the way, since it was our idea, they were like, wouldn't this be cool? Wouldn't you guys like this if you had this awesome tool? And they were like, sure, we'll take whatever data you can give us. But in the case of the marketing project, we actually sat down with the stakeholders, with leadership, and we talked to them about this, and we asked all of these questions and drilled into it. So we have a question mark on the merch one, and we have a check mark on the marketing one. Next, don't go dark while you build. This is super important, and this is a lesson that I continue to learn till today. Communicate excessively. Sometimes projects can take weeks, months, or even years to go from concept to delivery, and a lot can change in the business in that time. By keeping in contact with your stakeholders on a regular basis about your progress, whether you're making progress at all, if things get delayed, if you learn something interesting halfway through, we want to build a relationship with our stakeholders through these communications, and we want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date requirements. So things change really quickly, and depending on the business performance and investment and who's working on what, things can shift. And sometimes if we go dark and we don't communicate with our stakeholders, I've seen sometimes people forget that they even asked us to do something or that we're working on it, and they move on and they actually don't need it anymore when it's done. Or they've asked someone else to do the work, and we end up doing double the effort across two teams if we're not communicating. So that's terrible. In the merchandising project, this was actually a pretty quick effort. So we did catch up with the stakeholders, but it was very casual and it was not very refined or regular. In the marketing project, this project is the primary life lesson where I learned this communicate effectively thing. We were having regular weekly meetings. We had regular weekly emails with updates and individual conversations with our stakeholders. So question mark again on merch and a check mark on the marketing project. Okay, bottoms up and tops down. So we want to make sure that we have business alignment on the work you are doing. Do we have that business alignment at a leadership level? Do we have it at a contributor level? This is really, really tough. And you think it gets easier as you progress in your career, but it really doesn't. Maybe you just get a little bit better at managing the politics and having relationships. But I think it's important to have the leadership support for these kind of large scale projects that you're working on. But I think it's equally important, and sometimes even more important, to have the contributor support, because those are the people that are actually going to be using your product or putting the results of it to use. So in the merchandising product, we did not really have business alignment. Aside from the like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And then doing it thing, we didn't really talk to anybody. It was just something that we were, sort of interested in and self-started the project. For the marketing project, it was a month-long campaign, put together these gorgeous decks, went to leadership, said, have this really great idea. Here's how it's going to work. Here's a roadmap. Here's the great stuff we're going to get at the end of it. And did the same thing, but with a different deck to the contributors, the people on the marketing teams, the people coding emails, to talk to them about how this was going to be a better and more accurate way to measure their products. So tops down and bottoms up, we have a check mark in marketing and an X in merchandising. I bet you guys can figure out where this is going. Okay. Next, another super important but difficult thing. I feel like these are getting these are in order of easy to hard. Is guarantee resources, and this is really important, and it varies dramatically from company to company and from team to team. But we don't usually work alone to get things built and implemented, especially in data science. We need to bring our supporting teams like engineering or product, or in these cases, merchandising and marketing, along from the beginning and ensure that they have your project on their roadmap. So we don't want to get to a place, say, with this, for example, with this marketing model where like, okay, we built this, it's gorgeous, the results are amazing. Oh, but we don't have anybody to implement it and put it into production for us. So we're just going to like manually run it, once a week if we get to it. And if somebody goes on vacation, maybe we'll miss it that day. We need to work in that case with engineering to make sure that they can help us implement the model and get results in an automated way. So check mark for both of these, since I worked with my engineer on both of these. And this is the last step. We want to build something that has value. And this is actually, I think, one of the most difficult things. We need to prove the value of our work in actual dollars. And it's absolutely worth it to spend the time to figure it out and use it as a tool to prioritize and demonstrate the value of your work and your organization at large. A lot of times I get asked the question, how much money does data science and analytics make for the organization? And that's a really tough question to answer. But by putting this effort into your projects as you get them going, you can demonstrate the value of that project, get people psyched up, get those engineering resources that you needed, and generate adoption, especially if you have a good estimate up front. In the case of the merch project, that one was actually really easy. They figured out just by remerchandising top 10 items how much money each store could get every week, every month, and that was a number that we delivered pretty seamlessly. Marketing is a little bit tougher, but we were able to figure out how we could improve our overall marketing efficiency, and with that, deliver value to the business. Okay, so 2 check marks. So final results. Merchandising project. Sad story, was not implemented. And this was, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 years ago, and I still think about it all the time, and I'm very sad. I think about all of these question marks and X's about what I could have done different. And then the marketing project was implemented, and that was also about 4 years ago, and it's still being used today. Okay, so in summary, so 6 easy steps to generate adoption: have an idea, gather the real requirements, don't go dark while you build, get bottoms up and tops down support, get those resources guaranteed, and build something that has value. And if you are interested in building something that has value, we at Nordstrom are hiring. So we have roles open in all of our key areas, all of them driving value to the business. And I'll tell you, we have dollars against every one of those projects in supply chain, merchandising, strategy, personalization, and digital. So we have data scientists, data analysts, technical program manager roles, and manager of data science roles. And that is what I have. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Julie, for a great talk. That's very insightful. Go dark while you build really resonated with me.
I'm a little early.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, a lot of these, like how do you, I guess, like, how do you go about like guaranteeing that there will be resources for a project?
I think it depends. Usually what we do is we think about the projects sort of up front when we're doing our planning for the entire year. And then we mush those projects in with the roadmaps of our product partners and with our engineering partners, and make sure that those roadmaps align. So I want to make sure that we're considering the stuff that's on their list, because they're going to need analytic support in the same way that we might need their support to get things going. So it's really a team effort. Okay, we have a question, says, how do you balance don't go dark while you build with taking up the time that people could be doing other things when the project isn't ready yet? I think might need help sending this answer live. Oh, got it. That's a great question. And this also varies from organization to organization. Here at Nordstrom, many of our teams are lucky enough to have a TPM or a PMT or a program manager to help them with the regular communication and updates and stakeholder relationships. But in some cases, that is the role of the data scientist or the team's manager themselves to maintain that communication. And it is tricky. And we do get pushback sometimes from our particular data scientists who are not great at being program managers themselves and having to do that layer of communication. But I think it's really important to build a quality product, to take the time from the person who's actually doing the work to sit down with the stakeholders and gather the requirements and build that relationship. I think the product's going to end up being better. Okay, next question. Oh, we got questions. Awesome. Hi, Julie. Hi, thanks for the interesting presentation. I got one question. When building a new product or solution, if there isn't much historical data for use, how can we improve or justify the proposal? Thanks so much. Oh gosh, that is a really good question, and it happens a lot, as I'm sure you can imagine. I think sometimes it could be a balance of art and science. And so you can take an educated guess at what sort of metric this is going to impact and to what extent it will. Other helpful ways to do this, I think, are also to look at industry, and if other companies or other teams have done something like that and published any results or information on the kind of impact it had on their business. We use that a lot if we're doing something like that. In other cases, if we don't have any way to justify the value and we're really not sure what it's going to be, we either treat it as an exploratory project and we allocate a certain amount of our resources to that every year, and we figure it out or test it as we go. Or if we're really not sure, we won't work on the project at all. Can you expand on how to calculate the dollar amount impact of a specific project to the business? Sure. So this is going to vary a lot depending on what the project is. So in the examples that I gave, the merchandising project, we calculated the value by looking at the top 10 products that were surfaced, and we subtracted the value that we actually got from the sale of those products from what we forecasted we would get, and considered that our opportunity value. And that was a relatively straightforward sort of way to estimate the impact of the project. Now, there is, with that kind of thing, the idea that if the customer might buy the item that you forecasted and re-merchandise instead of something else that was in that place that you have to think about. And I think for like an initial upfront sort of swag, it's okay to be a little bit more casual depending on what you're doing, and then you can implement it as a test to actually prove the value. Maybe pick, in that case, sister stores, some where to give it a try and other ones to hold out and they have maybe a similar customer base. In the case of the marketing project, we didn't have any precedent for that at the company. So we did think about what could it look like if we improved our return on ad spend efficiency by 5%, by 10%. What could that look like? And we came up with the percentage that we thought we could improve it by talking to other companies who had already implemented a model like that, and they gave us an idea of how much it improved their efficiency. So we used that as a baseline. But it's going to vary depending. Got a question from Alex Sprayberry, one of my favorite analysts. She says, hi, Julie. What is one development or new trend in the analytics space that you are excited about? So I just talked to some people at a university yesterday, some students, and it was really excited. And they were really thinking a lot about how privacy regulations are changing the way that we can measure marketing. And, you know, as browser have make changes so that cookies on the websites don't last as long, and things like iOS 14, and you get those, you know, notifications on your app that say like, do you want app to track you? And most people say no. I say no, even though that data helps us a lot. I am actually super excited about it because one, I love the idea of consumer privacy. I think it's super important. And it gives us the opportunity to build like really cool, novel approaches to measurement. We're exploring like brand new areas and ways to do stuff. And I think that is super exciting while respecting our customers' privacy. Okay, we have 3 more questions. It says the session is ending.
Yeah, so we probably have time for just one more.
Okay. Andrea says, do you have tips for working with product teams that continually request dashboards, but in the past, dashboards don't get used? Oh, Andrea, this one hits hard. That happens. It happens a lot. So what I've done with this in the past, and I think you can get creative, and it also depends on the relationship that you have with product. But I've thrown Google Analytics on my dashboards. I have put pixels on emails that I send out with regular updates. And if I find that it's not getting used, I will pull things down that we've already built. But if it is, they're asking for something new to be built, I will make sure that you are getting those hard requirements. What are you going to use this for? What kind of decisions are you going to make? How often do you need to make those decisions? And I think through that process, we can really get at whether or not it will actually get used. If that things aren't getting used, I think definitely set up tracking, quiz them. I think I would set up regular quizzes in a Slack channel with KPIs that were featured on the dashboard. And if they couldn't answer the questions, we had prizes and like candy and stuff. But I think you can get pretty good indicators they're not using them and pull them down and talk to them about it. Like, be upfront. Like, wouldn't you rather we were working on something that had meaningful impact to the business? Lots of ways.
Well, thank you so much for a great presentation, Julie. This concludes our session. If you have additional questions, you can message Julie directly in Excelvance or send her an email. I'll send the email in the chat. And these 2 questions that are left will be actually still open if you want to answer them through typing. And then up next, we have some topical networking sessions. So another chance to meet attendees face-to-face. So looking forward to continuing the conference. But thanks again, Julie.
Thanks so much for having me.